eventually that's what we are seeing in whether it's in Chhattisgarh or in Rajasthan or what happened in Madhya Pradesh. So the fact of the matter is that Rahul Gandhi, because he is himself not taken, technically speaking, the mantle of leadership. So therefore, he is not in a position to be that assertive that normal Congress president would be, or for that matter, Sonia Gandhi. So everything is in the realm of some kind of assurance or a promise, and there is no clarity. And I think that is something Congress needs to address itself on top priority.
So, fact of the matter is, these two tall leaders of your party are still continuing to fight. And the bigger fight that you should be waging is against the BJP.
No. Entire thing is misunderstood by the people, even by the media. It's so unfortunate to tell you frankly this thing. The Siddaramaya's birthday nothing to do with the party forum at all. Siddaramaya's birthday, it's 75th birthday, where his well-wishers are doing it. Where D.K. Shivkumar Saab is talking about, he is also contended, nothing wrong with it. Nobody is saying that he is not interested in being a chief minister. They're all leaders. You know very well the KPCC is an important portfolio. The party president, and CLP also important portfolio. There is no difference of opinion at all. All that Congress party is definitely fighting against the corrupt government in Karnataka. What is wrong in he is saying it's my last election? It doesn't mean that he has declared himself as the candidate of Karnataka state chief ministership. Shivkumar never said he is the only candidate of chief minister of Karnataka state. We all working together. 1 minute, let me finish it. We are the leaders working together. We believe in collective leadership of Karnataka politics. Today Karnataka politics, we are doing, Congress is trying to expose the BJP because the misrule in the name of religion or in the name of corruption.
This is precisely what I am saying, that when a senior leader says this is my last election, is he not trying to invoke sympathy so that he becomes the top man? When another leader says if Vokaligas want to see a chief minister in the state after S.M. Krishna, it has to be me. He's saying in as many words.
It is... No. It is these two people have said in a different context by trying to say that we have to bring Congress to power in Karnataka state. That is the idea of telling it.
All right, now shifting focus, the death of a class 12 student in Tamil Nadu's Kallakurichi has sent shockwaves across the country. The second autopsy, ordered by the Madras High Court, was conducted yesterday, and the process took over 3 hours. The autopsy was conducted by a team of 3 doctors appointed by the court, and it was also videographed. Meanwhile, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin held a meeting via video conference regarding the matter yesterday. Now, the ministers and secretaries briefed the Chief Minister about the people who instigated the violence and the steps taken to curb it. Now, right before we head into a short break, we will tell you about a special initiative, Network 18's initiative Netra Suraksha, India Against Diabetes, in association with Novartis, is back with its second season where we are raising much-needed awareness around diabetic retinopathy, an eye disorder caused by diabetes. Here are some glimpses of the power-packed launch from the BSF War Memorial in the Ran of Kutch, Gujarat.
Indian soldiers protect the country's borders with their watchful eyes. And even as they do that, we here on Network 18 want to protect their family's vision from diabetes. Join Network 18's initiative, its mission to protect India's vision from diabetes, Netra Suraksha, India Against Diabetes, in association with Novartis.
What the trigger is. Khamenei's top aide claims that Iran can make nuclear bombs. In fact, this aide went on to claim that Iran has not decided whether to build one. Iran already has enriched up to 60% of uranium. Under the 2015 nuclear deal, in fact, Israel claims it may have to act against this nuclear threat. US President Joe Biden was in the region just a few days ago. He's vowed to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon at all costs. A Haryana police officer was run over by a truck while he was conducting a check on illegal mining.
This image sums up the terror of the mining mafia in Haryana. Deputy Superintendent of Police Surinder Singh was run over by a truck in the Noor district. His crime? He was on a mission to stop illegal mining. Singh had reached the spot after he got information about illegal mining being carried out. The police officer saw a truck in the vicinity and signaled the driver to stop. He then asked the truck driver for his license and papers. The stone-laden truck driver panicked, sped up the truck and ran over the cop. Singh was rushed to the hospital where doctors declared him dead.
बहुत दुखद ये घटना हुई है। हमारी सांत्वना हम उनके परिवार के साथ भी और उस परिवार की भी जिसकी क्षति हुई है उसके साथ भी खड़े हैं।
Despite a Supreme Court ban dating back to 2009, mining has continued unabated at several places in the Aravalis.
Well, at least 20 people have died and another 30 are missing after a boat capsized in the river in central Pakistan. The boat carrying more than 100 people was heading to a wedding when it capsized in the Indus River. In Sadiqabad, the passengers were mostly women and children. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Iran. It's his only second foreign trip since he invaded Ukraine back in February. He met with Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran. The visit is essential in a bid to try and deepen ties with Iran, which is one of the few remaining international allies that Russia still has. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been closed for maintenance and it's making Germany squirm. In fact, gas deliveries from Russia to Germany have dropped to zero right now. Germany depends very heavily on natural gas from Russia to power.
Welcome back. The race to become the next Prime Minister of the UK enters a decisive round today, as the Tory MPs will vote the final two candidates who will then face a vote from party members. In the fourth round of voting, Rishi Sunak led the charts with 118 votes, followed by Conservative MP Penny Mordaunt with 92 votes and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss with 86 votes. Now, the votes today will decide whether Sunak will face Liz Truss or Penny Mordaunt. Now, essentially what we're going to do is give you a small look at what the voting numbers were in stage 4. This is the fourth round of votes and it took place late last night. Essentially, now for Rishi Sunak, the ex-Chancellor of the UK, remember he resigned from his post when that entire debacle with the ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson happened. Now, in the fourth round, he got 118 votes. Now, essentially, the next candidate, who is a close runner-up because in all of the rounds of voting, she essentially has remained the second highest in terms of votes. Now, in this fourth round of voting, she's a Conservative MP. She got 92 votes. There is still quite a bit of a gap between the votes that Penny tends to get and the votes that Rishi tends to get. Now, third, you have UK's Foreign Secretary. That is Liz Truss. Now, in the fourth round of voting, she essentially got 86 votes. Now, I think it's important to mention that in this particular round of voting, Rishi, his votes went up by about 3, while Penny's votes went up by about 10, close to 10. And essentially, we're seeing a bit of a rise when it comes to Penny's support from the Conservatives as well. Now, essentially, the fourth candidate who is now out of the race for the UK Prime Minister is Kemi Badenoch. Now, she is a Conservative MP and she had 59 votes. Now, because that is the lowest amount of votes in this race, she has now been disqualified from the race for the UK Prime Minister's post. And the top 3 that remain are Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss. Now, next we're going to give you a very quick look at another piece of information, essentially about the counter campaigns that are going on against Rishi Sunak. Remember, he's an Indian origin. Now, offensives are essentially being done by heavyweight Sajid Javid and Sir Ian Duncan Smith and Lord Agnew as well. Now, Sajid Javid was actually part of the race for the UK Prime Ministership, but he didn't get enough votes. This was in the first or second round of voting, and he was taken out of the race as well. Now, Rishi Sunak has essentially also been attacked over his economic policy when he was Chancellor. This is another thing that's going on against him. Now, Boris Johnson's reported essentially, so Boris Johnson, the ex-Prime Minister of the UK, he apparently is not supporting Rishi Sunak. He is instead supporting Liz Truss, the UK Foreign Secretary. Now, another thing that's going on against Rishi Sunak is the Daily Mail's aggressive counter-campaign. Now, the Daily Mail is essentially a digital newspaper that constantly leads campaigns against people who may not essentially be who they want to be in power. I remember during the entire Meghan Markle debacle, the Daily Mail also went with an aggressive campaign against her as well. Now, back to essentially what Rishi Sunak, the counter campaigns against him, the Sunday Telegraph brand Sunak as a schoolboy, a liar, and untrustworthy. These essentially are the things that are going against Rishi Sunak. Now, let's listen in to what my colleague Sanjay Suri had to say about the race for the UK Prime Minister's post.
So we are into the last round now of the first stage of the process to elect a new Conservative leader and therefore Prime Minister. 3 candidates left in the race: Rishi Sunak, the front-runner by far, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak almost certainly is one. The race now is between Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss to see who takes him on. That will be followed then by the second stage of the election process, when the voting will be thrown open to 160,000 Conservative Party members. They will then decide over the next few weeks which of the two should be Prime Minister, and that will be decided by a mostly postal ballot. The question now is whether Rishi Sunak can consolidate his gains among the MPs to support from among the Conservative Party members. He is up against a lot of odds. He is up against, for a start, Boris Johnson, who has been campaigning against him through Liz Truss. He is up against a lot of the tabloid right-wing press that is coming up with an undoubtedly racist slant to its reporting aimed at him. But clearly, in the debate so far, Rishi Sunak has been head and shoulders above the rest. He is the only one who appears to know what he's talking about, and surely that message will get through to Conservative Party members. Rishi Sunak is in with a very strong chance to become the next Prime Minister, and is expected to cross the first hurdle officially later on Wednesday.
A heat wave is sweeping across the globe, impacting the United States and breaking records in parts of Europe and the UK as well. Meanwhile, more than 100 million people in the United States are under heat alerts from California to the plains and over to the East Coast. CNN's Chris Nugent gets us this report.
Across the globe, scorching temperatures are causing major concerns as people struggle to find relief.
We are trying to avoid the extreme sun.
The United Kingdom bracing for even hotter temperatures after the national all-time heat record was shattered midday Tuesday, according to the country's National Weather Agency. Heathrow, home to London's main airport, recorded a temperature of more than 104 degrees Fahrenheit.
We've never had this kind of heat, so why would we be prepared?
In France and Spain, thousands have evacuated their homes as several wildfires rage throughout southern Europe. Here at home, more than 100 million Americans are under heat alerts that touch portions of more than 20 states. The worst of it centered over the plains and lower Mississippi into much of Texas, where heat warnings are in effect.
We need to be prepared for much more severe events happening much more frequently. And that, affects the emergency management system outside of just the city of Dallas, but at definitely the regional, state, and federal level.
Scientists say climate change is fueling the heat.
I think we just have to adapt, don't we? Our homes have to change, our way of life has to change, really, doesn't it?
As more than 100 million people in the United States are under heat advisories or warnings, CNN's Brian Todd talks to experts about how dangerous these high temperatures can be. Listen in.
In Scottsdale, Arizona, a UPS driver is unsteady as he walks to a front door. He collapses. He seems close to passing out, then gathers himself, but doesn't look stable as he walks away. Brian Enriquez, who lives there, wasn't home at the time, but later saw the doorbell video on his phone and called police to check on the driver.
Want to make sure that these guys are safe, and with this heat, they don't have AC in those trucks.
UPS later said the driver was fine and that its drivers are trained to deal with hot weather. Around the country this week, more than 100 million people are under heat advisories or warnings, with around 60 million Americans likely to see temperatures over 100 degrees.
And the incredible heat in the southern plains now makes its way into the Tennessee, the Ohio Valley, to the northeast, the larger populated cities. And the outlook for all of next week is much above average.
On Wednesday, expect heat index values near 100 degrees in parts of the Northeast and heat advisories for Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, which has declared a heat emergency.
This is serious heat, and we're really concerned about those, particularly with pre-existing respiratory conditions.
Cities from Sacramento to D.C. offering cooling centers and splash parks. Doctors say avoid the heat and drink plenty of fluids.
Wear loose-fitting clothing, light clothing, things that are breathable, such as cotton and linen, and then also keep well hydrated and wear wide brim hats and try to stay in the shade as much as possible.
One town in Arkansas losing power following a windstorm when temperatures hit 106.
It's terrible, especially when they got heart problems.
If I get too hot, sometimes I pass out.
And new concerns about wildfires due to the heat and the wind. This fire popping up near Fort Worth, burning over 500 acres. Is this heat the new normal?
The planet's getting hotter. It's already hotter than it's ever been in the entire history of human civilization. And almost certainly, no matter what we do over the next decade or two, because we're not going to cut our emissions to zero tomorrow, the planet's going to continue to heat up. We need to be cutting our emissions pretty quickly.
Experts say they are also seeing more humidity.
They are delivering a level of humidity that we just never used to have. And those are the days that are likely to become more common as we move into the future.
Well, that's the end of this bulletin, but stay tuned for the latest updates and developments on the biggest stories of the day. Thanks for watching.
Lawrence Bishnoi, operating from inside the Tihar jail with impunity, had no qualms ordering multiple hits on Salman Khan.
The sculptor himself, the main man behind this, is saying that there is actually no difference.
Drugs to try and fund their terror operations and to also try and radicalize young, impressionable minds while confining them to the throes of drug addiction.
What is becoming increasingly worrying and problematic is that issues related to education is becoming so polarizing.
Build one. Iran already has enriched up to 60% of uranium under the 2015 nuclear deal. In fact, Israel claims it may have to act against this nuclear threat. US President Joe Biden was in the region just a few days ago. He's vowed to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon at all costs. A Haryana police officer was run over by a truck while he was conducting a check on illegal mining.
This image sums up the terror of the mining mafia in Haryana. Deputy Superintendent of Police Surinder Singh was run over by a truck in the Nadu district. His crime? He was on a mission to stop illegal mining. Singh had reached the spot after he got information about illegal mining being carried out. The police officer saw a truck in the vicinity and signaled the driver to stop. He then asked the truck driver for his license and papers. The stone-laden truck driver panicked, sped up the truck and ran over the cop. Singh was rushed to the hospital where doctors declared him dead.
बहुत दुखद ये घटना हुई है हमारी सांत्वना हम परिवार के साथ भी और उस परिवार की भी जिसकी क्षति हुई है उसके साथ भी खड़े हैं.
Despite a Supreme Court ban dating back to 2009, mining has continued unabated at several places in the Aravalis.
Well, at least 20 people have died and another 30 are missing after a boat capsized in the river in central Pakistan. The boat carrying more than 100 people was heading to a wedding when it capsized in the Indus River. In Sadiqabad, the passengers were mostly women and children. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Iran. It's his only second foreign trip since he invaded Ukraine back in February. He met with Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran. The visit is
A very good morning to all our viewers. You're watching the morning show, and now we're shifting our focus to the biggest evolving political story of the year, the Sri Lankan crisis. Amid chaos, turmoil and crisis, the Sri Lankan Parliament will elect its new president today. After the Lankan Parliament opposition withdrew his candidature, 3 people are now in the fray. Now the competition for the Prime Minister will be between the very contentious Ranil Wickremesinghe and Dulla's Allaha Perumal. However, another contender, Disa Nayaka, who is known to be a critic of Wickremesinghe, is competing for the post as well. Meanwhile, the Tamil Progressive Alliance and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party have decided to support Dulla's. All right, so there you go, the Sri Lankan presidency in question today. We know Gotabaya resigned just a few days ago amidst large cries of go Gotabaya go, and Ranil Wickremesinghe as well facing a lot of heat. So it's very interesting that he has chosen to run. Of course, the numbers look like they are on his side. So it does look like he might have the numbers, but also the ire of the people. CNN's Will Ripley speaks to acting president Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is also a front runner for the Sri Lankan presidential polls. Listen in to this exclusive conversation.
You said earlier, as president, it's important to tell the truth. Do you think that the previous administration was telling the truth to the people of Sri Lanka?
No.
They were not?
They were not.
They were lying to the people?
They were covering up facts.
What were they covering up?
That we are bankrupt, that we need to go to the IMF, amongst others.
So what would you like to say to the people now, truthfully, as somebody who could very likely be their next president?
To tell the people, I know what they are suffering. We have gone back. We have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, but we can do it. We don't need 5 years, 10 years. By next year, let's start stabilizing that, and certainly by 2024, let's have a functioning economy which will start growing, export-oriented economy, a dynamic economy.
There is a very serious crisis in Sri Lanka. That the situation there is unprecedented in terms of the what we are seeing, the financial and social and political consequences of that. It is a very close neighbor, so naturally the level of concern as well as the worry that there would be spillover to India is there. The support that India has given, $3.8 billion assistance, no other country has given this level of support to Sri Lanka, and the initiatives that we are taking, how to help them and facilitate their engagement with other bodies including IMF and with other debtors.
Now we join by Purnima Murali, who was covering the protests in Sri Lanka, live on this. Purnima, for perspective, in that very telling interview with CNN, Wickremesinghe says, "I am not the same." And that is the allegation made against him by the Sri Lankan people, that he is from the same known faces, and which is why he's invited so much ire. They've also saying that he was acting hand in glove with Rajapaksa, but now Wickremesinghe trying to do a U-turn and saying it was Rajapaksa regime who was covering up facts. Now, will this turnaround help Wickremesinghe in the elections? And do you think he is poised to win, considering he has the numbers?
Well, at the moment, it's a three-way contest, but there is a close race between Dulla and Ranil Wickremesinghe. Remember, the ruling party is now divided, while the General Secretary of the SLPP said that they will vote for Ranil Wickremesinghe. There's also another ruling party member, Dulla, who's also expressed his interest to contest for president candidacy. Therefore, there's going to be a tough race between two. Remember, 225 parliamentarians will decide who Sri Lanka's next president would be. Sajith Premadasa, the leader of opposition, has now announced that he's withdrawing his candidacy and will be supporting Dulla. So the race is now between Ranil and Dulla, and it's going to be a tough fight. Remember, it's a secret ballot, and we'll have to wait and see who the winner is. At 10 a.m. is when the parliament will begin. the voting will then take place and the final person will be appointed. However, a day before, about a day after filing nominations, today they will vote for presidency. But yesterday, a lot of other smaller parties in Sri Lanka had also pledged their support for Dallas and not Ranil. The protesters who held a press conference late last evening said that their demand for the resignation of Ranil will continue and they will wait and watch the developments that are panning out today. Protesters, even after a telling interview by Ranil to CNN International, they are very clear that they want Ranil also out and they see him to be someone who's protecting the Rajapakshas, even though he's blamed the Rajapaksha government for covering up the entire economic crisis.
All right, Purnima, do stay with us. We're also joined by Abhishek Jha for more political perspective on this. Abhishek, Priyanka there telling us about how Dallas looks like he's getting more and more support, especially politically. How is India viewing these developments? Do we have a candidate who is perhaps one that we favor? And how are we monitoring the situation?
So, Shilpa, India has clearly tried to stay away from all the internal political situation of Sri Lanka. Time and again, External Affairs Ministry, through its spokesperson or its representatives or High Commissioner in Colombo, has tried to tell the people or the masses of Sri Lanka that there has been no interference from Indian side in Sri Lankan politics, and it does not want to do it in future also. At the same time, the support, both economic or humanitarian, in terms of aid, assistance, grant, or whatever, that will be continued for the people of Sri Lanka for their betterment. And the economic crisis that Sri Lanka is dealing currently, that is something that India can help and India wants to help. And India can explore ways where more investment opportunities can be opened up in Sri Lanka, where Indian companies will go, they will invest. And probably this could be a long-term solution that India can provide to the people of Sri Lanka for a stable economy. We know that currently the economic situation in Sri Lanka and the political crisis both are feeding into each other. The economic crisis has created the political mist, and the political mist is not letting the economic crisis revive. So first thing first, now the Sri Lankan people are trying to get our leader. We have as our reporter was also telling us, that Sajid Premdasa, now he has withdrawn from the race. Now Vikram Singh and Dallas, these are the two prominent candidates who are going to be fighting for the election of president. There is also reports that Dallas and Sajid Premdasa, they might have a deal where Sajid Premdasa would become prime minister if Dallas is elected as president, and probably there will be some constitutional amendment also which will allow the prime minister to have more executionary powers. Which was the case until 1978, when the constitutional amendments in Sri Lanka were made and the presidential ruling were brought in. So these could be the deal that is going in the background, why Sajid Premdasa might have withdrawn from the race of president, and now the numbers of or MPs that Sajid Premdasa have can support the president, and president can appoint him prime minister. Meanwhile, but India has clearly stayed out from the internal political development from there. In fact, there has been
Abhishek,
one
staying on that, and I request you to stay with me. There is some breaking news coming in about Indian nationals in Sri Lanka. Amid the current situation in Sri Lanka, Indian nationals in the island nation have been requested to remain aware of the latest developments and accordingly plan their movements and activities. If required, Indian nationals can contact us. This is the message from the High Commission of India in Colombo, Sri Lanka. So our viewers from Sri Lanka who are watching us, that is the message from the High Commission. You can contact them. Abhishek, what is how safe is it for Indian nationals currently? Of course, in earlier years, we've seen anger against Tamils, but that is abated considering the entire nation has come together to battle the economic and political crisis. But when it comes safety-wise, how are Indian nationals placed in Sri Lanka currently?
Shilpa, it doesn't look like that the Indian nationals were targeted because they were Indian. However, there has been a report where Indian officer of working Sri Lankan High Commission was reportedly assaulted by a mob when he was somewhere around near the mob, and probably this is why the High Commission in Colombo has issued that statement that beware of the situation. Of course, wherever there is mob and there is sort of not order or rule of order, or there is an anarchic situation, people should avoid that space or that region. In fact, other embassies like Swiss embassy, US embassy, Chinese embassy, they have also issued certain advisory of this kind in the past. But India yesterday issued this advisory after one of its officers was attacked by a mob. We know that mob does not have a mind, so probably this would have been one of the incidents where somebody got caught between that situation. But probably it was not intended to target an Indian personnel, because this is what embassy has, High Commission has maintained, that people should
Hopefully
stay
not. Abhishek,
aware of the situation
interesting that you
surrounding them.
say that, because we also have Purnima with us. Stay with us. We have Purnima with us, who was there covering the protest, very much in the throes of the protest. Purnima, now we are finding out that one Indian officer was attacked during the protest. Perhaps, incidentally was just collateral damage in that mob. Did you find any anger directed towards Indian nationals when you were out there covering the protests?
Well, many protesters, in fact, have thanked India for the assistance they have provided during the unprecedented economic crisis. In fact, many of them, when we've asked them to choose between India and China, they prefer India to China, and they feel that India is trying to help Sri Lanka when in need, and therefore there's no anger directed at the Indian nationals there. In Sri Lanka, there are many Tamils also who joined the protests, and interestingly, the banners that we've seen in terms of the protest site at the Golf Face, there are banners in Tamil as well, talking about the people's struggle and the people's movement. So this is something that we have seen, where they've always had the opinion that India has been a very friendly nation and also trying to help Sri Lankans when in need. So no anger directed at Indian nationals. Their only anger directed so far has been towards the Rajapaksa family. And now with Ranil being chosen by the Rajapakshas as the interim president, and before that also as a prime minister, that's where the anger is directed towards. No anger towards Indian nationals and the country, because they feel that India is one of the few countries that's helping them when they are in dire need.
That's Purnima Murli. They're telling you that Sri Lankans now view India as a friend because we have been providing them with aid, in fact, even choosing us over China. Thank you very much for your inputs, Purnima. But I request Abhishek to stay on with us. We have some breaking news coming in, all the way from Britain, in fact. All right, political turmoil continues and turnovers continue across the world, and this is a reality show that I'm glued on to. It's called Who Will Become Britain's Next Prime Minister? The race has entered a decisive round today, as the Tory MPs will vote the final two candidates, who will then face a vote from party members. In the fourth round of voting, Rishi Sunak led the charge with 118 votes, followed by Conservative Party MP Penny Mordaunt with 92 votes and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss with 86. The votes today will decide whether Sunak will face Liz Truss or Penny Mordaunt.
So we are into the last round now of the first stage of the process to elect a new Conservative leader and therefore Prime Minister. 3 candidates left in the race: Rishi Sunak, the front-runner by far, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak almost certainly is one. The race now is between Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss to see who takes him on. That will be followed then by the second stage of the election process, when the voting will be thrown open to 160,000 Conservative Party members. They will then decide over the next few weeks which of the two should be Prime Minister, and that will be decided by a mostly postal ballot. The question now is whether Rishi Sunak can consolidate his gains among the MPs to support from among the Conservative Party members. He is up against a lot of odds. He is up against, for a start, Boris Johnson, who has been campaigning against him through Liz Truss. He is up against a lot of the tabloid right-wing press that is coming up with an undoubtedly racist slant to its reporting aimed at him. But clearly, in the debate so far, Rishi Sunak has been head and shoulders above the rest. He is the only one who appears to know what he's talking about, and surely that message will get through to Conservative Party members. Rishi Sunak is in with a very strong chance to become the next Prime Minister, and is expected to cross the first hurdle officially later on Wednesday.
Going across to Abhishek, there was Sanjay Suri there from London telling us how Rishi Sunak is all poised to take that top seat. Now in India, of course, we know Rishi Sunak as Narayana Murthy's son-in-law, and we consider him an Indian son of the soil. In fact, of course, I'm sure he considers himself a British citizen. So India very excited about this development?
Of course, I think it's not India. The world is watching the election that is happening in UK, because if Rishi Sunak gets elected, it will be a sort of a great coming back of all the all the territories that the UK or the colonial UK once ruled, and somebody coming from that is now ruling in UK. It would be just something that has juxtaposed the history. So probably that is one of the reasons why the world is watching the current UK political development. Beside that, there will be, of course, some probably euphoric sentiment among Indian, because Rishi Sunak belongs to Indian origin. He is son-in-law of Infosys founder Narayana Murthy. And probably this is why people expect that Rishi Sunak would have a more sympathetic or more understanding approach towards India and policy. But one must always consider that Rishi Sunak, if elected as a UK Prime Minister, he would have his priorities set right, that UK's interest would be his first priority, not Indian interest. We can have more, space or more elbow room to discuss things with in context of India-UK relationship when Rishi Sunak gets elected. But one must not doubt that his priority should always be the interests of UK, and this is how he will be driving his prime ministership if he gets elected as the prime minister. His political gains, that the margins he has tried to gain over his, the one who is trailing him, Liz Truss and Monsoon, is widening, and probably if you talk about these MPs votes, it looks like Rishi Sunak is all poised to lead the election or win through a very large margin. But we'll have to also understand the grassroots worker, how do they see Rishi Sunak? Will they go with the right-wing tabloid reports that our Sanjay Suri was reporting, that those right-wing tabloid reports, will they get influenced by that, or will they consider voting through a very rational mind, or try to elect a person who is young, who is charismatic, who is a strong policy background, who has been, steering the UK clear of all the economic crisis during the past 2 years when the pandemic has hit the country badly. So will they consider the credentials that that Rishi Sunak has with him, or those racial mind games will play up during the election? That we'll have to see, and we don't have to wait for very long. In a few days' time, that will be very much clear.
Well, yes, indeed. But, I feel like his pros outweigh the cons, because look at the cons. His wife Akshata's non-domicile tax status, or perhaps the fact that he broke lockdown rules, minor here but major there in London, England, of course. Rishi Sunak also turned on the charm offensive. We saw his wife come out with tea for the guests, and really somebody who has been playing by the numbers when it comes to this post, and right now is just 2 seats short. He had about 118 votes in the last round of voting. So it does look like he's all set to perhaps become Prime Minister. What do our Indian officials feel about it? Have there been any official statements that have started coming in already?
Not really, Shilpa. Like the turbulence that UK is facing is just a political, upheaval among the party members of Conservative. It's not a widespread political turmoil that a country would like to react. India has not reacted officially on that. But of course, I'm sure people like us or people like officials, everybody is watching the political development that is happening in UK in the Conservative Party, and how this all is going to pan out in the days to come. We know in the first week of September, the UK Prime Minister the new Prime Minister should take charge to the office when Boris Johnson will be stepping down officially, and a new Prime Minister will be taking up the office charge. Also, the gap that we have seen, Rishi Sunak has only gained over the last few days when these debates, TV debates, have started, and the leaders have been removed from the race of UK Prime Ministership. So Rishi Sunak's gap has only widened from his the second number contenders, and this tells us that no matter how sharp the attacks have been, no matter how sharp the political commentary has been against Rishi Sunak, he has been faring very well, and probably if all goes well, Rishi Sunak could be one of the first Asian origin Prime Minister of UK if it all goes well.
Oh, yes, indeed. And of course, Indians are happy, elated, in fact, because we can't help but think it is one of our own, as we did for Kamala Harris. On that note, we're going to take a very short break. Political updates will continue on the other side.
Presidential race, Premadasa announced a decision on Twitter. He said that he was withdrawing his candidacy for the greater good of the country and supporting rival candidate Dallas Alaperuma. In fact, the Sri Lankan Parliament will tomorrow meet and elect a new president, and the fight seems to be between Ranil Wickremesinghe, the interim president right now, and Dallas Alaperuma. Now, let's take a look at the three men who are in the race to be the next president of Sri Lanka. Ranil Wickremesinghe, of course, is the current acting president. He's backed by the ruling SLPP, which is the party of the Rajapakshas. Dallas Alaperuma is a senior leader, again from the SLPP. He's been a multiple-time legislator. He's a lawmaker from Matara in the southern part of the country. He's considered to be a dark horse in this race. Also, the final one is the JVP leader, Aruna Kumara Dissanayaka. In fact, he is from the left-wing Janata Vimukti Peramuna. He's a strong critic of Prime Minister Wickremesinghe as well as the Rajapakshas, but he's thought of to be as too radical a candidate to be leading the country at a critical time such as this. Meanwhile, back home, day 2 of the monsoon session of Parliament was rocked by opposition-led protests.
Despite no protests or demonstrations being allowed inside the Parliament complex, opposition MPs gathered in front of Mahatma Gandhi's statue. Congress's Rahul Gandhi, NCP MP Supriya Sule and Priyanka Chaturvedi of the Shiv Sena stood side by side and protested over price rise. They held placards on inflation and raised slogans against the government. The protest comes a day after the goods and services tax on packaged food items came into force.
जो टैक्स जीएसटी टैक्स उन्होंने लगाया है उसके बारे में हम अंदर जाकर अपनी बात भी रखेंगे और लड़ेंगे.
The drama continued inside the house, with opposition MPs interrupting proceedings.
सदन के अंदर तख्तियां लेकर आना उचित नहीं है.
Opposition MPs are also demanding a discussion on price rise and GST.
Well, after a viral video of some men offering namaz at a mall in Lucknow in Uttar Pradesh, Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has warned of strict action over unnecessary remarks and staging demonstrations to obstruct the movement of people. 4 of the 8 men seen offering namaz have been arrested.
सांप्रदायिक विद्वेष की स्थिति पैदा करने का जो कुत्सित प्रयास हो रहा है, सड़कों पर या पूजा के लिए या किसी भी अन्य कार्यक्रम के लिए कोई जगह नहीं होनी चाहिए और इसको किसी भी प्रकार की अनुमति नहीं दी जानी चाहिए.
A day after upholding their conviction, a Delhi court has released Sushil and Gopal Ansal for the period that they had already undergone for tampering with evidence in the 1997 Upar cinema fire. The court took note of the old age of the convicts while deciding on the quantum of punishment. Israel is reportedly preparing to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, and here's what the trigger is. Khamenei's top aide claims that Iran can make nuclear bombs. In fact, this aide went on to claim that Iran has not decided whether to build one. Iran already has enriched up to 60% of uranium under the 2015 nuclear deal. In fact, Israel claims it may have to act against this nuclear threat. US President Joe Biden was in the region just a few days ago. He's vowed to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon at all costs. A Haryana police officer was run over by a truck while he was conducting a check on illegal mining.
This image sums up the terror of the mining mafia in Haryana. Deputy Superintendent of Police Surinder Singh was run over by a truck in the Nadu district. His crime? He was on a mission to stop illegal mining. Singh had reached the spot.
Welcome back. After the break, the Maharashtra political fiasco just continues and it is getting bigger. The Supreme Court is set to hear 2 pleas filed by the Eknath Shinde camp of the Shiv Sena challenging the disqualification notices issued against 16 rebel lawmakers who switched sides. Remember, this happened last month during that decisive switch when Eknath Shinde became Chief Minister. The court will also hear the pleas filed by the Uddhav camp challenging the appointment of Eknath Shinde as the Chief Minister of the state. The Uddhav camp has also urged the Apex Court to declare the Special Session Assembly as unconstitutional. This was the same session where the floor test was conducted last month and the MBA government was thrown out of power. Meanwhile, Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla has confirmed the appointment of Rahul Shivale as the leader of the Parliamentary Party of Shiv Sena. Joining us is Ananya Bhatnagar.
महाराष्ट्र में शिवसेना भाजपा का सरकार स्थापित हुआ। हमारे हिंदू हृदय सम्राट बाला साहेब ठाकरे जी के विचार लेकर हम लोगों ने ये सरकार स्थापित किया है भारतीय जनता पार्टी के साथ शिवसेना भाजपा का। हमारी सरकार जो है उसे आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय जी, गृह मंत्री महोदय जी और केंद्र सरकार का पूरी तरह समर्थन प्राप्त है। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी कहा है कि राज्य के विकास के लिए आप जो भी कदम उठाओगे, जो भी प्रकल्प आप आगे ले जाना चाहते हो, उसे पूरी तरह हम लोग समर्थन देंगे।
Okay. Now going across to our legal correspondent Ananya Bhatnagar. Very good morning to you, Ananya. Today is the day the Supreme Court will be hearing those very crucial pleas because as we predicted, the Shinde camp and the Uddhav camp will be taking the legal route. Now, who has the advantage here? Because during the last hearing, the court had said that they are not going to take away the powers of the governor. So now, if they were to perhaps overrule that floor test or to declare that constitutional assembly as unlawful, then it would become a huge political point because that would mean the chief minister would no longer be valid as Eknath Shinde and perhaps the court would not take that step because earlier they said they won't be overstepping the powers of the governor.
Well, yes, very good morning to you and our viewers, Shilpa, first of all. And now, the matter is now again before the topmost court of the country, while the Shinde camp says that they are correctly chosen, they had the numbers, they had won the floor test, and now, in fact, the Uddhav camp, on the other hand, says that the 16 MLAs are disqualified and their votes cannot be counted, and hence the government does not sustain, the special session of the assembly does not sustain. But anyway, floor test is considered as the litmus test of democracy, and hence Eknath Shinde camp somewhere or the other has a clear advantage over the Uddhav camp. Apart from that, it is the real question is who is the real Shiv Sena now. So that is what is the Supreme Court would be deciding. Apart from that, what we also know is that the Maharashtra Secretariat, the Secretariat of Maharashtra has given out an affidavit before the topmost court of the country, which we had played out first for our viewers, wherein it has been said that the new speaker that has been elected is completely in its power to decide these disqualification applications, and hence the older speaker, the deputy speaker's powers are not at all necessary to be revoked or reinstated. And in fact, the Supreme Court, when it was hearing the matter during the floor test or after that also, was of a very clear question as to how can the deputy speaker be the judge of his own cause? How can he in fact turn down a no confidence motion against him, merely saying that the mail was received from an unverified source? So these are the questions that the Supreme Court would be asking. The Supreme Court would also be asking that if these MLAs disqualification proceedings have been initiated against these MLAs, what is their locus at this point of time, whether they can vote, whether they cannot vote, and whether their vote could be counted or not. But it would be a very, very fierce battle, definitely the last limb that Uddhav Thackeray camp is holding in order to save their government in Maharashtra. So we'll have to wait and watch as to whether the Eknath government sustains or the MVA come back to power. Shilpa.
Well, yes, a very flimsy chance there for the Uddhav Thackeray camp, looking at the proceedings that have been taking course in the Supreme Court so far. I'm taking this across to Siddhant Mishra, in fact. Siddhant, in a relief to Shiv Sena MLAs of the Uddhav faction, the Supreme Court had asked newly elected Maharashtra Assembly Speaker Rahul Narvekar not to proceed with the plea seeking their disqualification that was sought by the Shinde camp on the ground of defying the party whip during the trust vote and the election of the speaker. You know, I feel this was one of the few times the court did give relief to the Uddhav faction. But on June 27th, the Supreme Court issued notice to Deputy Speaker seeking his reply on the plea filed by Eknath Shinde camp against his disqualification notices. So I haven't noted much relief coming Uddhav's way, except this one time when the Supreme Court had, asked them to not proceed with that petition asking for the disqualification of people who voted against the party whip. How can we expect things to play out now? Because as Ananya was pointing out, this really seems to be the last leg that Uddhav Thackeray is standing on, that perhaps it will be in courts where he will find justice and get an advantage.
Well, look, situation is not very easy for Uddhav Thackeray to sail through. He may think this way that Supreme Court, there could be a relief coming from Supreme Court. But as Ananya was highlighting, that in democracy, the number matters. And the numbers are clearly with Eknath Shinde and Devendra Fadnavis in Maharashtra. And this is perhaps the reason that even if, in fact, before this hearing also, they had filed multiple petitions asking for urgent hearing in the matter. But Supreme Court refused to give urgent hearing and kept matter for the hearing on 20th of July, that is today. So basically, in the last hearing, Supreme Court has asked both the parties to maintain status quo in the matter. Today, Supreme Court is going to hear the petitions that have been filed by Uddhav Thackeray camp and petition that was filed by Shinde camp. But Uddhav Thackeray camp petition is challenging the decision of the governor to call the house for the floor test. So that is a petition which has been filed by Uddhav Thackeray camp, and there are other petitions as well. Now, it would be interesting to see that whether Supreme Court grants any relief to Uddhav Thackeray camp, because at that point in time, on 27th June, when hearing took place in Supreme Court, this issue was raised that whether decision would be infructuous or not. So to which Supreme Court said that it is infructuous. If tomorrow if people have voted and Supreme Court finds that the disqualification should take place, then in that case the entire process is not infructuous. It can be reversed. So that was also one argument which was given by the Supreme Court then. So it would be interesting to see what happens in Supreme Court. Multiple petitions are before the court, and we've been told that at around 11 a.m. the hearing will begin.
You know, that's interesting that you say that, Siddhant, because so many legal experts, even those on Shinde's camp, believe it would be rendered infructuous once there's a floor test and there is a decision. But no, the Uddhav camp not giving up. Going across to Mihir Trivedi with more on this. Mihir, even if the Uddhav camp manages to get some relief at the Supreme Court, I don't know in what effect they could, considering that looks very difficult now. The numbers are definitely dwindling on his side in a very embarrassing manner. Yesterday, 12 MPs again seen meeting with Eknath Shinde. Why is Uddhav carrying on this legal battle? At the end of the day, even Sanjay Raut has asked for a presidential rule. Surely, even the people who supported him among the Maharashtra citizens, anger must be mounting.
Absolutely. As far as the Shiv Sena led by Uddhav Thackeray, it is not only a matter of proving their point either in the Lok Sabha or the Assembly, calling out this government and saying that certain things that have happened, the manner in which the government was formed was illegal according to them. It is also a matter of saving the Sena. Remember, we've seen a vertical divide within the Sena. After over 50 MLAs, now we are seeing 12 MPs siding with Eknath Shinde, and that is a matter of concern because
Now the battle will be about who is the real Sena, and Uddhav Thackeray has maintained his is the real Sena, but the numbers are not by his side. Many of his close loyalists have switched over to Eknath Shinde's camp, and there is a reason behind it. Many say that it is that growing resentment against the top leadership of the Shiv Sena when they really gave up that Hindutva agenda and sided with an unnatural alliance. Now these all issues have really caused this vertical divide within the Shiv Sena, and it is a challenge for the Shiv Sena to really save the party in many ways. We can see many of the top leaders are now siding with Eknath Shinde, and that will result into the fact that they will have to prove and save that Sena symbol, which is of prime importance to the Shiv Sena. That is the battle, and that's why there are several court legalities also involved now. If Uddhav Thackeray really doesn't act accordingly, then there will be a problem, and that's why we are seeing a lot of activity from Uddhav Thackeray-led Shiv Sena as far as the court is also concerned. We have seen multiple petitions where they are not only challenging the two sessions conducted by the governor, where the appointment of the speaker and the majority on the floor was proved by Eknath Shinde camp, but also several decisions made by the speaker is also challenged, because that is the only point that will help Uddhav Thackeray to, in a sense, ensure that he keeps his party, whatever is left, intact, and that is a big challenge at this point we are seeing, Shilpa.
Indeed, and it will all play out in court today, so we will find out what gets decided. Now, moving on to another tussle that we're seeing. The power tussle between DK Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah is now out in the open. This comes after DK Shivkumar made an open pitch to be the CM face. This is the first time ever that the KPCC chief openly pitched his name for the chief ministerial candidature. This comes after ex-Karnataka chief minister and Shivkumar's arch rival Siddaramaiah, during an address on the 18th of July, said that he might not contest polls from his home turf, Chamundeshwari, and that the 2023 polls will be his last election.
ನಾನು ಚಾಮುಂಡೇಶ್ವರಿಯಿಂದ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸ್ಪರ್ಧೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. I'm making it very clear. ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ನಿಲ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಲ್ತೀನಿ. ಮತ್ತೆ this is going to be my last election. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದವರಿಗೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಒಂದು ಹಂತದವರೆಗೂ ತಲುಪಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸಿಎಂ ಮಾಡೋದು ಯಾವಾಗ? ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಅಧಿಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಾಗ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ ಹಿಂದೆ ರ್ಯಾಲಿ ಆಗಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ವಿ. ನಾನು ಆಗೋದು ಬಿಡೋದು ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್. ಬಟ್ ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ನನ್ನ ಕೈಯನ್ನು ಬಲಪಡಿಸಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ.
Harish, just at that event recently, that Congress event with the community members of the Bokkaliga community, in fact, if I'm pronouncing that right, DK Shivkumar said you have another chance for someone from your community to become the CM. I won't say who, but we know that he is somebody from the same community. So a strong message coming out there from him about his candidature?
Absolutely, and remember, this is a counter to the Ahinda card being played out by Siddaramaiah. His supporters want to project Siddaramaiah as the leader of the Ahinda communities. It's a loose cluster of backward classes, Dalits and minorities. It's an acronym for that. And that will be one of the motives of the August 3rd celebration of Siddaramaiah's birthday bash, where they will project him as the leader of the Ahinda community and also show that he's been accepted by these communities, and that's one of the reasons why the High Command should name him as the chief ministerial candidate. And perhaps to counter that is why you have DK Shivkumar now openly talking about his caste and saying that I've told my community that they have a chance to make one of their own the chief minister, perhaps the only one after SM Krishna in the Congress party. to become the chief minister from the community, and that's the card he's playing. Remember, Vakaligas are one of the biggest communities in Karnataka after the Lingayats, and the Congress now in a fix. This is something that was always feared within the Congress here, that if Siddaramaya's camp tries to project their leader as the leader of the Ahinda communities, then you will have other communities getting antagonized, especially the bigger ones like Lingayats or Vakaligas. And now DK Shivakumar himself talking on these lines, it would be difficult for the Congress leadership. It's not just that, he's also made his ambitions very clear. In fact, in one of the statements, he says, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not wearing a saffron robe here, which means he too has ambitions. And in fact, he doesn't comment on Siddaramaya's birthday bash, but he just says, I have my own limitations, but I can't be a spokesperson for anyone. So over the last, just 3 weeks ago, you had Rahul Gandhi trying to attempt a patch up between Siddaramaya and DK Shivakumar, but looks like that hasn't really worked. And in the last 3 weeks, for the first time, we have seen DK Shivakumar being vocal about his ambitions, also unhappy about the event of Siddaramaya's birthday bash.
Well, Harish, there is definitely infighting within the Congress, and like you said, Rahul Gandhi tried to step in, but that's not happening because now statements coming in from both sides. Siddaramaya is also very categorical that he will be contesting for the post of becoming chief minister. He said that the MLAs will decide who will become a chief minister. Now, who has more support within the party? What is it looking like to you?
Well, a lot will depend on 2-3 aspects, Shilpa. One, once the ticket distribution process starts, which could be much later, somewhere in April, May, once again we will see a bitter battle or a very stiff challenge for the High Command, because both these leaders will try to get tickets for their own followers, because that will then play a bigger part once these MLAs get elected. And if indeed the Congress party manages to get a majority here, a lot will depend on who these MLAs support. Second, also as we've seen in the Congress party, a lot depends on what the High Command thinks. Siddaramaya has been backed by the High Command, but let's also not forget that DK Shivakumar has been a party loyalist, and many within the party, including in Bengaluru and Delhi, believe that the series of income tax raids and the ED raids that happened on DK Shivakumar was just because he managed to get the MLAs from Gujarat and get the election to go smoothly. Remember that incident that happened way back in 2017 is when you had DK Shivakumar getting Gujarat MLAs here, camping them at a resort in Bengaluru, and even as that was happening is when the income tax raid happened. Later on, the ED started investigation into it, and he had to go to Tihar jail as well. So there is sympathy, and also many within the High Command think that perhaps DK Shivakumar should be rewarded for his loyalty and the kind of risk that he has taken. So it's not an easy game. It won't be just who has more MLAs. A lot more will depend, and a lot more will play out in the coming months till the results come out.
Of course, and like you say, the deciding word will be coming in from that High Command. We don't have any commands for you. We just request you to stay on with us while we take a very short break.
Rescue and relief work is on in full swing in flood-hit Maharashtra.
In Chandrapur, teams of the NDRF and SDRF waded through waist-deep water to try and reach stranded residents. Boats were also brought out for the rescue operations as Chandrapur remained inundated. In order to evacuate people safely, NDRF and SDRF personnel used loudspeakers to try and give residents a heads up. That's when people came out of their flooded homes and gathered in one designated place. With rivers in Wardha and Spate, several dam gates were opened to release excess water. But several people ended up getting trapped in the fast-flowing water. That's when SDRF personnel jumped in and carried out a dramatic rescue operation.
It's another setback for Uddhav Thackeray after Shiv Sena's 12 MPs joined the Eknath Shinde camp. Rahul Shivale has been appointed as the leader of the Shiv Sena in the Lok Sabha. A new chief whip has also been appointed. These MPs have decided to back the NDA's vice presidential candidate Jagdeep Dhankar in the upcoming elections. Former Mumbai Police Commissioner Sanjay Pandey has been arrested by the Enforcement Directorate in the phone tapping case. The arrest comes after he was grilled by the agency for over 3 hours on the illegal phone tapping of NSC personnel. This was allegedly done between 2009 and 2017. Several countries in Europe are in the grip of a severe heat wave, with Britain touching its record temperatures today.
One of the worst hit is United Kingdom. For the first time in the country's history, temperatures touched 40 degrees Celsius. Roads are melting and power cuts are rising as UK swelters in the heat. Even runways were impacted by the heat, forcing several aircrafts to divert. An 8-day-long heat wave in Spain has triggered massive wildfires. Passengers in a train watched in horror as a wildfire tore through vegetation near the track in the northwestern province of Zamora. The train was traveling between Madrid and Ferrol but was forced to halt due to the wildfire. Paris is also sweltering in unusually high temperatures. For the second day in a row, temperatures soared above 37 degrees Celsius. Experts say the early heat wave is a sign of what's to come as climate change takes a toll.
Former UK Finance Minister Rishi Sunak has won the latest round of voting to replace British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Sunak has increased his tally from yesterday,
Welcome back after the break. As more than 100 million people in the United States are under heat advisories or warnings, CNN's Brian Todd talks to experts about how dangerous these high temperatures can be. Listen in.
In Scottsdale, Arizona, a UPS driver is unsteady as he walks to a front door. He collapses. He seems close to passing out, then gathers himself, but doesn't look stable as he walks away. Brian Enriquez, who lives there, wasn't home at the time, but later saw the doorbell video on his phone and called police to check on the driver.
Want to make sure that these guys are safe, and with this heat, they don't have AC in those trucks.
UPS later said the driver was fine and that its drivers are trained to deal with hot weather. Around the country this week, more than 100 million people are under heat advisories or warnings, with around 60 million Americans likely to see temperatures over 100 degrees.
And the incredible heat in the southern plains now makes its way into the Tennessee, the Ohio Valley, to the northeast, the larger populated cities. And the outlook for all of next week is much above average.
On Wednesday, expect heat index values near 100 degrees in parts of the Northeast and heat advisories for Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, which has declared a heat emergency.
This is serious heat, and we're really concerned about those, particularly with pre-existing respiratory conditions.
Cities from Sacramento to D.C. offering cooling centers and splash parks. Doctors say avoid the heat and drink plenty of fluids.
Wear loose-fitting clothing, light clothing, things that are breathable, such as cotton and linen, and then also keep well hydrated and wear wide-brim hats and try to stay in the shade as much as possible.
One town in Arkansas losing power following a windstorm when temperatures hit 106.
It's terrible, especially when they got heart problems.
If I get too hot, sometimes I pass out.
And new concerns about wildfires due to the heat and the wind. This fire popping up near Fort Worth, burning over 500 acres. Is this heat the new normal?
The planet's getting hotter. It's already hotter than it's ever been in the entire history of human civilization. And almost certainly, no matter what we do over the next decade or two, because we're not going to cut our emissions to zero tomorrow, the planet's going to continue to heat up. We need to be cutting our emissions pretty quickly.
Experts say they are also seeing more humidity.
They are delivering a level of humidity that we just never used to have. And those are the days that are likely to become more common as we move into the future.
And with that, we're slipping to a very short break, but stay with us. News and updates will keep continuing right here.
Lawrence Bishnoi, operating from inside the Tihar jail with impunity, had no qualms ordering multiple hits on Salman Khan.
The sculptor himself, the main man behind this, is saying that there is actually no difference.
Drugs to try and fund their terror operations and to also try and radicalize young, impressionable minds while confining them to the throes of drug addiction.
What is becoming increasingly worrying and problematic is that issues related to education is becoming so polarizing.
Khomeini's top aide claims that Iran can make nuclear bombs. In fact, this aide went on to claim that Iran has not decided whether to build one. Iran already has enriched up to 60% of uranium under the 2015 nuclear deal. In fact, Israel claims it may have to act against this nuclear threat. US President Joe Biden was in the region just a few days ago. He's vowed to stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon at all costs. A Haryana police officer was run over by a truck while he was conducting a check on illegal mining.
This image sums up the terror of the mining mafia in Haryana. Deputy Superintendent of Police Surinder Singh was run over by a truck in the Nadu district. His crime? He was on a mission to stop illegal mining. Singh had reached the spot after he got information about illegal mining being carried out. The police officer saw a truck in the vicinity and signaled the driver to stop. He then asked the truck driver for his license and papers. The stone-laden truck driver panicked, sped up the truck and ran over the cop. Singh was rushed to the hospital where doctors declared him dead.
बहुत दुखद ये घटना हुई है हमारी सांत्वना हम परिवार के साथ भी और उस परिवार की भी जिसकी क्षति हुई है उसके साथ भी खड़े हैं.
Despite a Supreme Court ban dating back to 2009, mining has continued unabated at several places in the Aravalis.
Well, at least 20 people have died and another 30 are missing after a boat capsized in the river in central Pakistan. The boat carrying more than 100 people was heading to a wedding when it capsized in the Indus River. In Sadikabad, the passengers were mostly women and children. Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Iran. It's his only second foreign trip since he invaded Ukraine back in February. He met with Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran. The visit is essential in a bid to try and deepen ties with Iran, which is one of the few remaining international allies that Russia still has. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been closed for maintenance and it's making Germany squirm. In fact, gas deliveries from Russia to Germany have dropped to zero right now. Germany depends very heavily on natural gas from Russia to power its industry. German industry would be forced to cut its energy use. Possible ripple effects can be felt throughout the German economy. In fact, a complete shutoff to flows to Germany may even trigger a Europe-wide recession. French footballer Timuyi Bakayoko, who plays for AC Milan, was stopped by Italian police at gunpoint during a search operation. The video shows a police officer searching the footballer who is leaning against a car. Police later realized that it's a case of mistaken identity and then apologized to him. National award-winning filmmaker Maniratnam has been admitted to hospital in Chennai after testing positive for COVID.
Welcome back. After the break, the death of a class 12 student in Tamil Nadu's Kallakurichi has sent shockwaves across the country. The second autopsy ordered by the Madras High Court was conducted yesterday and the process took over 3 hours. Now remember, this girl had committed suicide last week. She had accused her teachers of torturing her. Now the autopsy was conducted by a team of 3 doctors appointed by the court and it was also videographed. Meanwhile, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin held a meeting via video conferencing regarding this matter. Yesterday, the ministers and secretaries briefed the Chief Minister about the people who instigated the violence and the steps taken to curb it. Days after violent protests were seen in the region of Kallakurichi, where the relatives of the 12th standard girl also took part. There's now heavy police deployment in multiple areas, including Vepur and Kadalur district. Remember, the second autopsy of the girl was completed yesterday because the family alleges foul play. So what we're learning is that this girl had fell off a building and unfortunately lost her life due to that, apparently due to suicide note as well. But the injuries found were only internal and there was internal hemorrhaging and bleeding. I'm joined by Ritu live from Kalla Kurchi. Ritu, this seems to be the main contention, doesn't it? This girl fell from a great height. There was no blood on the ground, so as to speak. All the injuries were internal, and that's something the relatives can't fathom.
Yes, you pointed out right over there. This was all on Tuesday when she had died by suicide, and then later point on the Wednesday the news comes out as the parents were also being intimated about this whole incident. But you see the parents who are alleging that there is a foul game in fact behind her death is what they are saying. There would be a sexual harassment and other facts of what the parents are alleging. But in fact, as the investigation is on, they are also trying to do a demonstration at the site of how this particular girl tried falling down from that building from the third floor, and what would have been the consequences, or what are the other facts that will have to be counted at, as the family is alleging a lot of things in this particular whole incident, and that they denied to accept the girl's body as well. They said that the second autopsy, in fact, there are the fresh injuries first of all have been found on her body, and that's when they started telling that there's a foul play. So after that, you see they denying the body, and there was a lot of twists and turns in this whole story. And later point, as the Madras High Court ordered that the second autopsy will be conducted with the presence of the father and also the lawyer, and this whole procedure will be videographed. But what had happened exactly on yesterday, in fact, is that the district administration tried reaching out to the family members, but their phones were switched off. They were all not reachable. But you see the family on the other side saying that they have reached to the hospital, but they weren't there. But later point, this whole procedure was being conducted without the parents. The second autopsy was over, and then you see the other side, the CBCID going and pasting this whole notice on the wall, saying that they can now in fact collect the body as the second autopsy has been done, but still the parent seems to be not reachable.
Well, as you're telling us, Ritu, this is the notice that was stuck by the CBCID. They pasted a notice outside the deceased girl's house in Periyana Salur village in Kadalur district, informing her family about the completion, about the post-mortem, and asking them to collect her body for the final rites. Now, the family, they are not going to be happy with this, right, Ritu? They, I'm sure, rejected the second autopsy as well. Protests are still going on. They want some answers. They want some answers about these fresh injuries, A, that were found on the body, B, the fact that how was there no blood found when she jumped from the building. They are definitely not happy, and I don't think they want to take the body right now. Perhaps they want another autopsy. What are they saying?
Yes, no, first thing was it was the family's demand, where they said that there were fresh injuries on the body and there is a foul play and it has to be re-examined. In fact, the re-postmortem was something that the family had demanded. But now remember, Madras High Court agreed to this particular demand of the family, and they did allow. And when the second autopsy took place, the family members weren't present, because on one side, when we tried contacting to the relatives of this particular deceased girl, they said that the family had left to the hospital, but at the hospital the parents weren't there. Now what we are seeing, and we are in fact hearing, is also that our sources are saying that the family is likely to take the further decision after the Supreme Court's order. Now that is something that they are waiting for, and then they probably will take decision on this particular thing. But on the other side, you see the CBCID pasting the second note. In fact, after the district administration, they have pasted this particular note on the wall of the house, which is in the Kodluru district. there the notice clearly states that since parents weren't able to turn up to the hospital, and though the district administration and the police officials had all tried calling family, especially the mother of this deceased girl, none of them were reachable, and that's when the autopsy had to take place as per the High Court's order. So that way that the second autopsy went on, but now the notice also says that since the second autopsy has already been done, you can come and collect the body now. But again, what sources are saying is that the parents are still not being able to speak on this particular matter, as they are still unavailable in the Kodluru district as well now. But meanwhile, the heavy security has been deployed in the Kodluru district, because if all of a sudden the family decides to take the body, in fact there would be a lot that has to be taken care on ground to keep the situation under control, because on July 17 when the violence broke out, there was enough of damage and the destruction that was being noted. So now the state police of the Tamil Nadu do not want to take risk at any cost and ensure that the situation is under control, whether it is Kodluru district or Kalakuchi or whole of Tamil Nadu. If you walk around the Kalakuchi district as well, every 500 meters you will get to see the police deployed over there. So this is something that is happening on ground.
Yes, Ritu, indeed, unmitigated anger there about a life gone too soon. But with that, it's a wrap from me on this bulletin. Next up, my colleague Toya Singh.
Good morning to all of our audiences. As Shubha just said, my name is Toya Singh. It's 9 a.m. in the morning on a Wednesday. We're about to walk you through all of the country's top stories right here on the Morning News. All right, we're actually starting the day, as you've just seen, with some breaking news coming into us from Uttar Pradesh. This is about the Uttar Pradesh New Public Works Department Minister Jitin Prasad. He's under the corruption scanner as a transfer scam has hit his department. Remember, this is just 13 months after he quit the Congress and joined the BJP to become a member of the Yogi Adityanath cabinet. Now, what we're learning as we speak is that the Yogi Adityanath government has been hit by a series of allegations of wrongdoing in transfers across different departments. The latest under the scanner is that of the PWD, held, as we just said, by Jitin Prasad, who you can see on your screens right now. First, you had an inquiry that found that his OSD, Anil Pandey, within the same ministry, was held directly responsible in that entire investigation for wrongdoings in transfers in the department. Questions have now been raised. As far as I believe, further action has been taken against more officials in that same department. The head and chief engineer was also suspended due to transfer irregularities in the same department. Now the big question is, will further action be taken? Let's go over right now to our Uttar Pradesh Bureau Chief, Pranshu Mishra. He's going to give us more context and more background to the entire situation. Pranshu, good morning. If you could just give our audiences a background, then walk us towards the action that's already been taken in the last few days and this big question of what further action could be taken. Could you tell us about that too?
Yes, Toya, see, the Yogi 2 government, it has faced, there was a certain big uproar over certain transfers which were happening across the departments. And if you remember, it was first the Deputy Chief Minister Brijesh Pathak who has in fact written a letter to his own departmental Principal Secretary, Department of Health and, and Medical Education, raising questions on the transfers. Now, that issue was brushed under the carpet, but as far as the PW Ministry is concerned, there is clearly action that has been taken against the OSD, who was directly attached to the minister concerned, that is Jitin Prasad. Now, 2 more officers have been placed under suspension. So the larger question which the opposition now is asking is, can the officers have worked with this sort of impunity unless and until they had certain patronage from the level of the minister? Now, at this point, even as we speak, there has been no indictment against the PWD minister. There is no questions within the government also that have been raised against Jitin Prasad. But then the larger question is, of course, is of the propriety. So if something was happening right under the nose of the minister, the larger question which opposition will clearly be asking is, can minister be actually unaware of all these wrongdoings which were happening right at the level of the OSD, who was directly handpicked by Jitin Prasad himself, who had this association of working with Mr. Prasada while in Delhi, and he was brought on deputation from Delhi to Lucknow. So all these questions are being raised. Now, even as we speak, we have learned from our sources that Jitin Prasad has met UP Chief Minister, has tried to clarify his position. There is also a strong buzz that he might also be meeting Union Home Minister Amit Shah to further clarify his position. So the question is that, Jitin Prasad's position at the moment may not be under the question mark. But the way the several departments, the allegations of corruption as far as the transfers is concerned, has erupted from various departments of Yogi Adityanath, including the PWD, health and medical education. That clearly comes in as an embarrassment. So as of now, no political heads have rolled out. Officers have been transferred out, officers have been suspended, but it clearly comes in as an embarrassment even as the government, has completed its 100 days in power. But the larger question is clearly on Jitin Prasad, the man, as you rightly said, a big Congress stalwart in the past, now a top BJP leader. The question is that whether there is some sort of murmuring also against him. Again, I am saying that, see, as of now, nothing has been, spoken against Jitin Prasad.
Okay.
Nothing, even the Department Inquiry Committee has also not questioned the minister's role. But the point that proximity of these people to the ministers who have been suspended, that clearly gives a lot of fodder to the opposition.
Okay, Pranshu, later in the day, we'll join you to understand more about the larger context. You're saying that this is a controversy that's rattling the entire Yogi Adityanath government, not just this ministry. So we'll come back to you to understand more. Right now, though, for our audiences, we're moving very quickly to our top story. This is also a particularly important international story as we speak. The island nation of Sri Lanka, 22 million people, is going to see its presidential elections today, and it's a particularly tight context. We're moving to that next.